Welcome. This afternoon we are in for a real treat. First, I'd like to thank all of my students, they're all right here, my fellow faculty and staff, administration, and all of those who have helped to make today's event a success. My name is Alexi Nachasti, and I'm a reading specialist here at Northbridge School. Our guest speaker has helped to inspire millions of readers, including in the 9th through 12th grade students at our school. He is a columnist for the Wall Street Journal and co-author of the current international bestseller, The Last Lecture. This book was a #1 New York Times bestseller and is still in the top 10 of the Wall Street Journal Book Index this year. In September 2007, our guest had the opportunity to attend the final lecture of Carnegie Mellon professor Randy Pausch and has been honored to carry forward Randy's positive life lessons ever since. Besides being a world-renowned writer, I could tell he is also a genuine, sincere, and passionate individual from the very first phone call I received in response to him attending Northbridge School. Please join me in giving a very warm Northbridge welcome to our Philadelphia area native and co-author of The Last Lecture, Jeffrey Zaslow.
Thank you, Alexi. Thank you. Well, thank you. It's great to be here, and I got to tell you, Alexi, she doesn't stop. She said, I want you to come here, and I want you to talk to my students, and I want you to talk to my family and friends, and so how could I say no? She was passionate about it. And I told her I was going to be here in Philadelphia today anyway. I actually spoke to 5,000 people this morning at the convention center downtown, and it's nice to be here with you guys right now. Who here read the book? I think all of you read the books? Raise your hand if you read it. Great. Good. And seen the lecture also? We watched the whole lecture. Great. Well, first I thought I'd tell you about just how I ended up there that day and what my job is at the Wall Street Journal. I write about life transitions. So whether it's the moment you're born and you have your first breath, and then you grow up and you have your first kiss, and then you get your first job, and you go to college, and I write about those little moments of transition when our lives change. You know, and then sometimes you're dying and you say goodbye to your spouse, your final words to your spouse. So every day in the Wall Street Journal, that's the sort of stories that I'm telling. And so I'm always looking for just kind of fun stories that I might see just when I'm out and about. I was at the red light down in Florida last year, and I looked to my left, and there was a woman driving a police car, which was about 99 years old, like this, driving a police car. And I said to my kids in the back seat, I think there's an old lady just stole that police car. So I got back to Detroit where I lived, and I called the Delray Beach Police Department, and they said that they have 5,000 senior citizen volunteers. They use stun guns and mace, and they wrestle people to the ground. They're the greatest generation. They're still doing their job. So I wrote about them for the Wall Street Journal. It was fun. And I like writing about young people and the youngest people, what they know and don't know, because we don't tell them. I thought a fun story would be I'd go to the statue of Walt Disney at Disney World, and I would ask 100 children going by, who is that guy, Walt Disney? So I did that, and only 34 kids could tell me who he was. One boy said he died on Space Mountain of a heart attack. There was a girl who said that he lives with Minnie Mouse in one of the hotels. Anyway, they don't know these kids because their parents don't tell them. So I thought it would be nice to write a story for the Wall Street Journal about that, about how the things that our kids don't know because we don't tell them. I like writing about the aging process. There was a movie star. His name was Robert Redford. He was a big movie star, and he was very handsome. Who here knows who Robert Redford was? Some of the older people, you know. So I wanted to write a story about when we get older, we don't always look as good as we looked when we were younger. I noticed that. So I thought, I'll interview Robert Redford, and he'll tell me what that's like, because he was so handsome when he was young. And I went out to California. I interviewed him, and I said, what's it like? You used to look good. You still look pretty good. You used to look really good. So he said, let me tell you a story. He said he was driving through New Mexico, and he stopped at an ice cream parlor, and he went in to get his ice cream, and a woman was in front of him in line, and she turned around, she goes, oh my gosh, it's Robert Redford. So she wanted to play it cool. She nodded at him. She got her ice cream. She left. He got up to the counter, and the guy behind the counter said to Robert Redford, you see that woman who just left? She put her ice cream cone in her purse. So we knew he still had it. So Anybody here been in love? Raise your hands if you've been in love here. Just your principal's been in love. How about you kids here? Don't be afraid. I like writing about puppy love. I wanted to write a story about this. There was a classroom in North Carolina where they asked the kids to do ABC books, and they like an ABC book of cars. A is for Audi, B is for Bentley, C is for Cadillac, or ABC book of fruit. Anyway, this boy, his name was Brian. He decided to do his ABC book of Annette. So I'm going to read to you from his book. It's a beautiful book. A is for Annette, that I love. B is for beautiful, like Annette. C is for cute, like Annette. I'll skip down here. K is for kiss, that I want to give Annette. V is for victory when I catch Annette. Anyway, I interviewed Annette. I said, Annette, what do you think of this guy, Brian? And she said, oh, I can't stand him. She was a safety. She would arrest him for running in the hallway. It was actually a very sad, pathetic story, but I thought you'd get a kick out of it. Anybody here read the Wall Street Journal? Some of you adults? Oh, good. That's good to hear, too. So I write for the personal journal section. The journal's a newspaper about the business of business. But I write about the business of life. And so the journal's they're great because they let me write about whatever I want. I wanted to write a column about the words, I love you. And the journal said, okay, go ahead. And so the lead of my story was this. There was a father in Chicago, he's a judge. His 17-year-old daughter was going out for the night. And before she left on a Friday night, she said to him, I love you, Dad. And he said, I love you, too. And then she left, and she died 5 minutes later in a car accident. So his last words to her were, I love you, and her last words to him were the same, I love you. Now, her mother was in the other room, and her mother didn't get that gift of saying, I love you to her daughter before she died. So I wrote in the newspaper, you know what? All of us can say I love you to our parents and our siblings. Even though you can't stand your siblings, you can do it. And so we should do that. And so I wanted to write that in the journal was really a wonderful gift to give to people. And people wrote to me. I got maybe 1,000 emails from people saying, thanks for writing that column. I have 3 daughters myself, 19, 17, and 13. Sometimes I write about them. My middle daughter was invited to go to the homecoming dance last year. And she was very excited. She got flowers, and she got her dress, and she was going to get her hair done. And then the night before, the boy called her, and he said, me and the other guys think the homecoming dance is for nerds. So we're not going to go. We're just going to go to so-and-so's basement and hang out in the basement. And I know what goes on in basements. I'm no idiot. And my daughter was sad. She wanted to go to homecoming, and she wanted to go to the dance with all her friends, and her girlfriends were sad. And I thought, what could I do as a father for my sad daughter? And then I hit on it. I could embarrass the boy in front of 5 million readers of the Wall Street Journal. So that's what I did. I wrote a column and I said to parents, if you've got sons, you tell your sons to be men of their word. If they ask a girl to the prom, take her there. And if you have daughters and a guy's not treating you right, then the hell with him. Go move on with your life. So I'm telling you guys, you're going to be going to college soon where people are text messaging in the middle of the night. What are you doing? At 3 in the morning. Watch it, girls, is my advice for the girls. And for the guys, treat the girls well, because if not, I'm going to come and write about you. That's what will happen. And because I have daughters, sometimes I write about what it's like to have daughters. A lot of teenage girls, they look in the mirror and they say, I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm stupid. And it's hard to be a teenager today. And so I've written about that, and I wrote in one column, a dad's job is to say to his daughters or his sons, I love you, you're special, here's why. And I said you can do simple things. You can put a note in your daughter's lunchbox, have a nice day at school today, I love you, and do that. So anyway, I got maybe 1,000 emails from men who said they did that. They put a note in their daughter's lunchbox, and one guy wrote to me and he said, he put a note in his daughter's lunchbox, and she didn't mention it when she got home from school. So he said to her, later that night, she said, did you get my note, honey? She said, I did, and so did 4 other kids at the lunch table. What is with the lunchbox notes today? So that's the power of the Wall Street Journal. I could write the column, and then people start putting notes in their daughter's lunches. Anyway, no story I've written in all the times I've been writing 30 years, and no story equals the story of Randy Pausch. And I'll tell you how it came together. I was sitting at my desk. I'm in the Detroit bureau of the Wall Street Journal. I got a call from the Carnegie Mellon Computer Science Department, saying they had this professor dying of pancreatic cancer. As you read the book, kids, so you know. And he was going to give his last lecture. Now, I went to Carnegie Mellon. I majored in creative writing there, so I knew about this last lecture series where professors think, hypothetically, what they would say if it was their last chance. In Randy's case, he knew it was his last lecture. So I called him on the phone. He had moved to Virginia to be closer to his wife and kids, his wife and kids' families, so that after he died, Jay, his wife, her family could help take care of the 3 kids, 6, 3, and 2. And I called him on the phone. He was driving to the airport in Virginia to fly back to Pittsburgh to give this talk. And he was so funny and engaging on the phone. I was uncomfortable. It's hard to know what to say to a dying guy. But I said to him, in fact, he was on his cell phone. I said, Randy, you want to pull over? I don't want you to get in an accident. He said, pancreatic cancer, an accident, let's just keep talking. So we talked, I got off the phone, I thought I'd really like to see him. And I decided I want to go, but the plane ticket from Detroit, where I live, to Pittsburgh was $850. And my editor said, just call him when it's finished and see how it went. But I thought, you know what, I'd really like to see him, so I drove. I drove the 300 miles. And I sat in the second row, and it was really an astonishing afternoon. It was just something else. He was the most alive person in that room. I mean, you think of a dying person, with the covers pulled up, and they're in their deathbed, and they've got a frown on their face. And there was Randy just telling jokes and saying, I'm going to have fun every day I have left, because there's no other way to play it. He had all his computer science students in the room. He said, I've had a deathbed conversion. I just bought a Macintosh. And they went crazy. It was like a nerd orgasm there in the room when they said that. So I knew I was seeing something special. I went back and I wrote my column in the hotel room of 800 words, and we also did this little 5-minute highlight clip. I'm not going to show you the highlight clip because who's seen the lecture? Just raise your hand if you've seen the lecture. So you don't need to see it, but with highlights of the lecture, we put that online and with my column, and people started taking my little video and sending it to their friends, and my column, sending it to their friends and loved ones, first all over the country and then all over the world. It was pretty spectacular. And Good Morning America called and said, can we get that professor on? So Randy said, okay, he'll go. And we had the only videotape of the lecture in New York, and we had a guy on a bike take it over to ABC, on a messenger on a bike, took it over there, and they played a part of it on ABC, and then that day 1 million people watched it on the ABC site. So it just kept growing and growing. If those of you who read the book or seen the lecture, you know that he tells people to let your kids paint on their childhood, on their walls of their bedroom. He painted on the walls of his childhood bedroom. And we started getting emails from scores of people saying they're having their kids paint their bedroom walls. And it's, Randy thought they're taking him so literally. He said, I was just telling him, let your kids be creative. But here he was, people were saying, you got to go paint your bedroom wall. No dinner for you until you paint your bedroom wall. That's the parents for. Oprah called and she invited Randy to come on, and she said, I'm going to give you the stage for 10 minutes. And he thought, well, first of all, I want to go on Oprah, I'm dying. But then he realized, well, you know what, if I can share some of my father's wisdom, his father had died a year earlier, if I can tell the world some of the things my father taught me, I'm going to do it. So he went on Oprah, and it was really, really phenomenal. Time magazine named him one of the 100 most influential people in the world. He just started growing and growing, and so there was interest in a book. And Randy wasn't sure he wanted to write a book because he was dying. He wanted to spend his time with his kids. And he wasn't sure he wanted to write a book with me because we didn't know each other that well. And he said, if we write this book together, I'm going to spend a large fraction of the rest of my life with you. So we better have fun, and it better be meaningful, and it better be something that, a legacy for my kids. And that's actually what my wife said to me when we got married, that same exact line. But I told Randy I would honor his story, and I would try to put together something that would touch not just his kids, but also the world. Randy wanted to write the book in a way that took no time away from the kids, so he had to get exercise every day, and so he would ride his bike around his neighborhood for his health, and he wore a cell phone headset. I was at my desk in Detroit. He rode around his neighborhood an hour every day, and for 53 days last winter, we spoke every day on the phone. And Randy was grateful, he said, to have me in his ear, because when he was alone on the bike, he would think about cancer, about dying, but when he was with me, he was almost performing. He was telling great stories about his life. It was really something else. There were times we were talking and things would just happen that ended up in the book. One time he was in his car, actually, and he went to the supermarket, he bought groceries, he went to the self-scan checkout aisle, and he put in his credit card. It didn't work. He put in his credit card again and spit out 2 receipts. He was charged $16 twice. And I was on the phone with him. He said, damn, I just been charged twice. I said, Randy, what are you going to do? And he said, I'm going to walk out of the store. If I have to find the manager, it's going to take 15 minutes to fix it. He said, I'm dying. I'd rather have 15 minutes than $16. And so we left. And it's a great lesson for people who read the book because all of us are dying, not as fast as Randy, but none of us have to argue with anybody. We can always make that decision not to argue with the manager or our family members or our teachers or anybody. And so that's the sort of lesson that was great in the book. Randy wanted to be Captain Kirk, as you read the book, he wanted to be in Star Trek. He was a fan, and Kirk was his hero. And as he got famous, he was invited to be in the new Star Trek movie. It comes out in May. I can't tell you he's got a one-line role. I can't tell you what the one line is, but I can tell you it's not memorable. He was invited, he always wanted to be in the NFL, was another childhood dream he talked about in the lecture. And so the Steelers invited him, the Pittsburgh Steelers invited him to scrimmage with them, and he loved doing that. And he promised them if they made it to the Super Bowl, he would live to see it. Well, they made it to the Super Bowl, they won the Super Bowl, he did not live to see it, but when I was watching in January the Super Bowl, that's what I was thinking. Randy he was not, you watch the lecture and you think he's like, just always smiling and just Superman. He wasn't. He said he would cry at 3 in the morning with his wife. They'd fall back asleep. They'd cry at 4 in the morning and wake up and cry. And then they'd say, somebody has to give the kids breakfast, and so let's get back to sleep. And then he said, the tumors are not going to kill me today. They're not going to grow big enough to kill me. And so they would make the most of each individual day. And that was beautiful to watch that couple decide to do that. There's not going to be a movie about Randy because he wanted his kids to watch him giving the lecture, not Tom Cruise. There were about 14 movie offers. Spider-Man wanted to do it. What's his name? Tobey Maguire. But Randy wants his kids to see him give the movie, do the lecture. The hardest chapter to write was the last chapter because it takes place in the final moments on stage. And so Randy and I both choked up when we were talking about that because he had to think about the end of the lecture, the end of his message to his kids, the end of his life. And so that was tough. The goal was to get the book written in Randy's lifetime, and he died. He knew he only had a few months. It was April that it was supposed to come out. Randy was still alive. We put the book in his hand, and that night ABC did an hour-long special on Randy. This morning they had printed 400,000 books, and they were all sold out all over America. Every store ran out of books because people had just taken to Randy. They were sort of so touched by his story and by the way he delivered his message. People ask why the lecture took off, and I think it's because it's authentic. It was a man talking to his work family, his students and his colleagues, and saying, go on without me and do great things. And also beyond that, saying, I love you. And then beyond that, saying, I love you to his kids. And so when people go on YouTube and they watch that, it's startling almost. It's just something beautiful to watch in a way, sad and beautiful. And also Randy, he had all his hair, he was tall, dark, and handsome, and there's something about the way he presented things. He had this charisma, and people just took to him. There was a poll taken of doctors in which they asked doctors how they would prefer to die, of a heart attack or cancer. And most doctors say they would prefer to die of cancer, and the reason is because you get to say goodbye. So Randy wasn't grateful for his cancer, but he was grateful for that chance to say goodbye to those he cared about. And so he was a realist, he was an optimist, he was a scientist. The first line of the book is, I have an engineering problem, because that's what Randy thought his tumors were. He's human. Human beings get cancer, they get tumors, what can we do about it? And he thought, you give money to smart young researchers, they'll find solutions. Not in his lifetime, but they'll find solutions. The toughest moment in the lecture, for those of you who have seen it, was right towards the end when it was his wife's birthday the day before, and he had a surprise birthday cake brought out for her. And he asked those of us in the audience to sing to her, to sing happy birthday. And we were really singing through our tears because we knew it was our last birthday together. And I was in the second row there, and as she came up, he sort of coaxed her onto the stage, and as she came up and she hugged him, I saw she whispered something to him. So I said to her when I was working on the book, Jay, what did you whisper to Randy? And she said she'd said to him, please don't die, the magic will go out of our lives. And so we put that in the book, but our editor in New York thought, gosh, that's just too hard to read, and cut the second half of the quote. So sometimes when I sign books now, people ask me to put in the full quote, which isn't in the book. I got emails from thousands of people saying how much Randy touched them, and he's on hundreds of thousands of websites, and I would send Randy links to a lot of that. And at one point he said to me, will you stop Googling my name and go hug your kids, because that's important. I mean, Randy doesn't have that gift to hug his kids, and I do. So remember that there's people in your life you can hug them, and I think of Randy when I do that. He stopped chemotherapy last May, started feeling a little bit better because he was done with the chemo, and he was invited back to Carnegie Mellon to give the surprise commencement address to the students. Al Gore, the former vice president, was the main commencement speaker, and then Randy was just surprised. I was there that day. He was backstage, sort of on the couch, almost in a fetal position. He didn't feel well, but he pulled it together to go give this commencement address. So after that, he carried Al Gore out of the stadium. That was good, too. The final email that I got from Randy was 7 days before he died. He'd gotten an email from a woman who said that she hadn't talked to her mother in 25 years, and she read the book and saw the lecture, and she realized life is short, and so she reconciled with her mother and called her mother. So I wrote Randy back, and I said, Randy, we've heard from a lot of people that say that they read the book and they realized life is short, and they've decided they want to leave their rotten spouse. So I said, you're a peacemaker, but you're also a homewrecker. So that was our last email exchange. He died July 25th at about 4 in the morning. Jay had gone to bed, the kids had gone to bed. His friend Steve was in the bedroom with him at home. And Randy was sort of joking there at the end, and he died at 4 in the morning. The next morning, by 7 o'clock the next morning, when word got out that he had died, I started getting hundreds of emails from people all over the world. And many said the same thing. They cried for a stranger. There was something about Randy that made them cry for a stranger. And a lot of people went on, thousands went on these websites that had talked about Randy and just wrote what he had meant to them. The book is now in 44 languages. It's been #1 in a lot of countries. It was #2 in Israel for a while. I think the Old Testament must be #1 in Israel. But I like to think of Randy at the end doing what he just started out to do at the beginning, which was to give these life lessons to his kids. Even though all these people are reading the book and watching the lecture, the day after Randy died, his son Dylan came up to his friend Steve in the living room, and Dylan said to Steve, is cancer solvable? And Steve said, some cancers yes, some no. And Dylan said, well, my dad told me the other day that I have it within me to solve problems. If there's a problem, I can solve it. And then Dylan ran off. He's 6 years old. And so at the end there, that's what Randy was doing. Even in his final days, he was talking to his kids, telling them the things that he wished he had 20, 30 years to tell them. Thank you guys for being such a good audience today. I'm happy to answer a couple questions if you'd like, and go out there and hug your loved ones and get over those brick walls and make magic happen. Yeah. Yes, do I still talk to the family? Yeah, I saw Jay a couple weeks ago. She's doing okay. The kids are doing okay too. Sometimes they wonder if they're going to get cancer. 'Cause kids think all sorts of things, but they're hanging in there, and they're smart. Her kids are smart kids, and they're doing okay.
As for me, I have some tears in my eyes and my nose is running, but one thing that I wanted to show you is the students. We read the last lecture, and we also compared and contrast the last lecture with the bucket list, and my students wrote poems, and some of the poems I want to share with you. I'm not going to read them to you because they don't want to be embarrassed by them, but they're going to be up there. There are no names attached to them, but some of them were very profound. And in the meantime, as you read those, I also would like to thank a couple of people who have made this happen. First of all, to my 11th grade students who inspired me. I don't want to cry, but you motivated me so much. So I thank you. We love you, Mr. Trustee.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to thank Jeffrey Zaslow for coming and speaking to you. Let me get it together first. The staff who made this happen, administration, I couldn't have done it without you, that's for sure. Especially Miss Harper, thank you. I also would like to thank, there are a lot of companies who donated items so that we could have a little bit of some lunch for Jeffrey Zaslow and for the adults. And those are companies such as Baker's Best. They donated pretzels, and all the students are going to get pretzels, soft baked pretzels. Her Foods Company, you are going to get potato chips too. Also, for the Northbridge students, the Les Garden Foundation is unable to attend, but one thing that they said they would like to share with you is they're all going to give you the bracelets. So, and I said that you guys would love it. Also, Mamma Mia Pizza, they donated the Trolley Stop Deli, Santucci Square Pizza, the Les Garden Foundation, the Flower Shop of Springhouse, and the Lansdale Florist, and also Barnes & Noble. We are going to be doing a book signing, so the book signing will be over there. It's $25 a book, and originally we were told we were going to be making about $5 on a book. Now we are going to be making about $9 on a book. So even more money to donate to the Luce Garden Foundation. So I thank everybody for coming, and I thank all of my students. And one thing, if I could share anything with you from the book, is set your goals, go for your goals, and break down any brick walls. That's it. Thank you.